Hello, this is Fan Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Maureen Scanlon for the first time. Welcome to the Fan Electric Ghost podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I really appreciate you having me on today, and I can't wait to talk to everyone. Thank you, listeners, for being here today and joining us.
I want to let people know, if you can see on there's a little icon that says listen on Newsly. We are a featured podcast or a sponsor of the podcast on that platform. It's an audio only platform, so you can check us out there later tonight. We have the coupon code for the audience to check that out for free of Ghost. If you use that, you can check out that audio platform for no cost for 30 days. And then the other thing we like to tell people, we're actually at episode today, 1007. We hit our episode 1000 on the weekend, and we continue to progress with our episode since 2016, tracking out on Apple Podcast. So again, we want to bring up your URL, with which we have the URLs of all the guests that we talk to. We have your lifecoachmaureen.com. That will be fully clickable when we're published on all the platforms that you can listen or view podcast on. If people click on that URL, what do they get? How do they interact with you there?
Yeah, so everything is on my website, everything from the podcast to, setting up a life coaching session, to also purchasing books, booking for speaking events. Everything is just right there, just one click away. And there's also contact me, and you can leave comments if you'd like and say, hey, I heard you on Ghost and I loved it. So yeah, everything is just one click. I'd made it easy, just not 100 different ways to find me, just one way to find me.
That's always good. So I think I always encourage people to be able to click through on that. Now that feature's there, and when we're published, people can actually go directly and find out more about what we're going to talk about today. And one of the things we wanted to talk about today is why observing your dog will give you a better life is a subject that I thought was interesting. I have a cat, and I believe my cat has similar properties, but you can talk about dogs, as that's what that topic is about. But we'll talk more about it. But maybe before we get to that, maybe you can give people your background. You're a certified life coach, and you've got expertise in modern applied psychology and animal psychology. So you're an award-winning author and a relationship expert. So maybe you can give people a little bit more detail on that.
Sure. So I'm actually now a master life coach. So I've recently gotten my master certification in life coaching. And yes, as you said, I'm a relationship coach, author. I also am a podcast host and a speaker. And what I speak on is how to be your own best friend. And I think it's relatable whether it's dogs, cats, or any pet that you have. I think all the animals teach us really to how to live life in the best way, the most easy way, because I think we humans make things so hard. We get in our way, we overthink, and it's just by looking at our pets, you can really like drill back and just be like, man, why don't I sleep when I'm tired like they do? Or why don't I play with toys when I feel like having fun? So all those things are super relatable. It's really what I write about in my books, is using the example of them and how we apply that to our lives.
I think that's really important, because one of the things I always talk to people, and I'm a producer, a musician. But one of the things I like to tell people when I'm working with them is, like, a lot of people strive for perfection to the nth degree. And I'm more into being in a present moment, and also not trying to compare as much. Like, if I get some young artists to come to work with me, and they're trying to show me how they can sound like the top 20. And I'm like, well, I really don't want to really go there, because they're already doing that. So show me the song that you're scared of showing anybody, because I think that
Ooh.
is probably more authentically you, and it probably shows your vulnerability, and that's more interesting, because that gives you your advantage. You might not think that gives you an advantage, but everybody else is doing whatever is out there. So what we want to do is take what you have uniquely as yourself, as your own vision and your voice, and just make it sound better. use better mics, use better techniques to make you sound better on your original demo. And that some people don't want to do that. They try to turn them into them. You know, the producer would just say, "Oh, just copy my formula." And I'm like, I'd rather take who they are, which is, I think I can apply to a lot of things, but you know, that's the way I look at things.
Yes. I mean, that's like life coaching right there by saying, you know what, be uniquely you, show the world something different. None of us are the same. And we don't want everyone to be the same. We're not robots. We want everyone to bring something different. That's the whole idea. You have it down. You have it down. I am so proud of you because you said, I just like to like be in the moment. And I like to just say, hey, bring something different, something new. That's what we all want, is something unique, something we haven't seen before. And like you said, applying that to music is the same as applying it to life. Our problem is, and you can relate to this in the music industry, is what is the audience going to think? What are the
Yeah.
people around me going to think? You know, like I have to
Yeah.
fit in, I have to conform, I have expectations that other people have on me. And so I love the beauty of that analogy of saying there are no expectations, there are only acceptance of yourself, and really bring in what you have. And those who love you will love you, and those who hate you will hate you. You can't change the outcomes, right? They're going to do it no matter what. But that's why when I talk about the dogs and my whole brand is, you know, learning to be your own best friend, is think of how you talk to your friends, how you talk to others, how your dogs love you so unconditionally, and they accept when you leave and come home. You leave for on vacation and you come home, they're not mad at you. They don't turn their back to you and say, huh, you left me for a week. No, they're happy to see you. And so I learned from my own background of domestic violence and some very, you know, negative narcissistic relationships, that codependent behavior that I had was exactly what I'm saying. I had all these expectations on me. There were no divorces in my family. You just suck it up, buttercup. You made your bed, lie in it. Learning to be your own best friend is learning to talk to yourself the way you would to others. And that's really the key to happiness. I mean, I always say the keys to happiness are buried in the backyard, because the dogs know exactly what happiness is because they don't hold grudges. They're spontaneous. They live in the moment. They do what they want when they want to do it. And they also just love unconditionally without being angry, without holding a grudge. And you think about those, say, dogs in the foster system, you know, that are in these shelters. They're there because someone abused them. Someone they should mistrust. And yet every family that comes in to get a dog, they're hopeful that that one is going to treat them well. And they still are happy and wagging that tail. That's how we need to go out into life, wagging that tail.
I think a lot of times people have these, you know, limiting beliefs along with kind of expectations, like, oh, I'm gonna find my soulmate and they're gonna save me. But it's like, if you're broken, then no one's gonna save you but yourself, right? If you've got something that's like a self-limiting belief, that belief isn't going away if you don't work on it. And this other person or this other situation isn't going to change it. So you keep on going from this situation to situation and wondering why you get the same result. Well, the same result because you didn't handle like the looking glass. I love the Victorian poets. You know, I'm into William Blake and you know, a lot of the Wordsworth and uh, Emerson, Thoreau. There's all these great poets, and they had this idea of the looking glass, and they would talk about like that kind of vulnerability of, are you actually going to do that self-assessment? And it's kind of buried in her poetry, but I kind of read through it and I said, wow. And being a songwriter, I was very inspired by the Victorians because they have like these layered images, but they try to get to the truth. And I try to put that in the songs I write because, you know, I don't like to be as obvious. There's a lot of people just like to be obvious and shock value, but I like to kind of, the way Dylan and Springsteen, some of the old school writers, they would throw things where you're like an author. Like they want to draw you in. It's like that idea of like, oh, a infant's shoes never worn. right? That makes you draws you in. Like, what does that mean? It's like if you write something like that, then you get drawn into it. You're not so obvious. And there's people like
Yeah.
today, they like to just bang you over the head with the obvious thing, and I want to kind of layer it.
I love that. I love that. And I think, I relate to that as a writer and a songwriter. You're painting a picture with words. And, we're not just using the basic colors, blue, red, and yellow. We're really mixing it up. And when you talk about the looking glass is a mirror. And that's what they're saying. The reflection is to be more self-aware. We've got to look inside. And I think the problem is we get lost. In fact, I just published a children's book because as a life coach, my first two books are for adults, and it's about really getting back to loving yourself, where children and animals, I think, are so pure at loving themselves. And if we can keep them remembering that, then they don't have to look later at fixing those things or finding someone to fill that void, right? That's the
Yeah,
problem. All the
yeah,
correcting of all the crap that happened when we were younger and we were watching these people raising us that we thought they knew everything. Well, they didn't. None of us do. They did the best they could with what they had at the time. We did the best we could as parents, and so on. So I wrote this book. It's called My Dog Bexley is Just Like Me. And it was, again, a way of looking at the dogs and saying mindfully that it's okay to be scared. It's okay to have emotions. It's okay to take care of myself. And really, that's why I think the children and the animals are just such pure souls, because they're still at a place where they know who they are, where the rest of us
yeah.
are getting back to figuring out who we are, right?
Yeah, I think that a lot of times the vulnerability, like in childhood, you don't have limitations until somebody starts telling you like you're not good enough, you can't do this. But if you have this childlike innocence that you're willing to explore, and what I find with creative people, whether they're artists, filmmakers, poets, painters, musicians, is we still have that kind of childlike curiosity. That when I deal with people who create, they don't feel like they need permission. They don't feel like I don't have the right to do it, or there's somebody better than me. And then some people feel like, well, that's arrogant that you think that you can go on stage, or you think you can read this poem, or you think you could write this book. It's not arrogant. It's like knowing, like not being scared of and
Right.
also being willing to have that vulnerability. They're like, I'm just not talking about the sports. I'm not talking about the weather. You go a little deeper, and yeah, you could get hurt because people are going to look at that and that work. You can take it personal. You can say, you know what? It's a law of attraction. I put it out there, and it'll bring people to me, and it'll drive people away, or people won't like it. But it's like if you don't put it out because you're so scared of the feedback, then you never get the result. It's just the way, I found this podcast. I just started doing it, and progressively you get better. And, a lot of people in podcasting, they stop after 12 episodes because they don't reach they get burned out, or they don't get the immediate feedback. But it's like, why were they doing it? The way I looked at it, like after 1,000 episodes, it's like 1,000 hours of talking to all these people who are like masters of what they know.
Yeah.
And I'm getting like an education for free. I'm just, by spending the time, it's this oral history that human beings have always done, these oral transfers of knowledge. And if you
Yeah.
look at it that way, like after 12 episodes, it's like you're not failing. You can still learn more. But there's like, if you were looking at some number to hit, some chart to hit, some algorithm to hit, like what were you trying to do?
That's just it. Like, people have this view of success as money and things. And I always tell people, what are people going to say at your funeral? They're not going to say that's a great car and that's a great house. They're going to say you did this thing and made me feel this way. And I'm with you. My podcast, my books, my life coaching, I know I'm in my passion because I do it all for free and practically do. I'm just kidding. I love it. Podcasting is free until you get sponsors. It's hard to
Yeah.
monetize, but I don't do it for that. I always say it's my get to. I love the conversations. When would you and I get to cross paths? Ever? in this world, in this life, you and I would never cross paths if it
Yeah.
weren't for you jumping off that cliff and saying, I'm doing it. And I'm with you. My podcast, it's that opportunity to get to know you, get the nuggets of information and wisdom and experience that you have, because I'm limited. And that's the thing. People stay in their limited little window of experience, and you're missing this whole world outside of that window if you don't talk to people, right?
Yeah, it's that box. People like I used to work. I mean, I still am a corporate America person. I'm a consultant. I made a decision in order to do the art things I want to do, because I work remotely. Because I used to be one of these guys jet setting around, flying around, being out from like Sunday to Thursday, flying out. And then after, even before COVID, I just said, you know what? I can't do my art. I can't do my music. I can't do my podcasting. I can't do the things I really like to do. And I can't garden and I can't be at home because these people expect me to be running around. And I can still do the work. So I'm a consultant and I do software design. I've been doing it for like 5 years. And I don't have to travel like I used to because I made a boundary. I decided, you know what, you guys don't have to reach into my life and control so much of my life that I can't do what I want. Yes. I'm going to find something that's going to match what I want to do artistically and still work. So you don't have to be a starving artist, but it's just a matter of finding the people who will allow you to be who you want to be.
No, you're so right. What you did was you found balance. And that is really obviously the thing in life that we need. If you don't have balance, something's going to be off kilter. Health, mental health, emotional health, money, finances, relationship, something's going to be off if you're not balanced. I, like you, was in corporate world while I started my coaching business. And I talked to someone, met up with just someone random. They met me on LinkedIn, said, hey, let's have a conversation. And I hope this gives you drive too. She said to me, you can't swim in the ocean and you can't run on the beach with 1 foot on the sand and 1 foot in the water. Mm-hmm. And I was like, it was my epiphany moment when I said, if I'm not believing in this 100%, how do I expect clients that come for coaching to believe in it 100%? And like you said, it's not being arrogant. It's being confident. I think about it. You don't want to go to a hairdresser who's like, well, I'm okay at hair cutting. No, you want to go to a hairdresser who's like, I'm one of the best hairdressers at coloring and cutting hair there is. You don't want someone who's not confident. That's being your own best friend. And you do have to counter those beliefs that were instilled in you. If you were ever told, I do a lot of exercises on shadow work in my coaching, where I'll say, what were you told? How were you labeled as a child? What did people say to you? How did you behave in reaction to that? And it's just amazing how much negativity we've been told, even if it's sarcastic or joking. Some families, like my family, we just talk to each other in sarcasm. It's just who we are. And sometimes even that sarcasm cuts and it sticks in there. I remember being told, that I was dramatic and I wanted to be an actress. I'm like, that's a good thing if I want to be an actress. Or that I talked too much, got in trouble in school for talking too much, had straight A's, but I talked too much, as if that was a bad thing. And now what do? I talk for a living, but I had to overcome the belief that was a bad thing. I had to believe, okay, now I'm like, that's a damn good thing. Because look at us. I can talk about anything. So overcoming your own belief, let alone other people's beliefs about you.
Yeah, because it's so limiting. Okay, a lot of people look at art and they say, well, that's not something you can do unless you're an A-level person. You got to be like Frank Sinatra to be a singer, or Johnny Mathis or something. You can't think of doing it if you don't have that quality. But that got rewritten when Bob Dylan showed up you can be a singer, and the actual content of what you sing could be more important than your actual voice. And that was revolutionary in the music industry. I mean, Dylan was so revolutionary. He set the stage for all these people to go in, the punk aesthetic and like new wave and all these other kind of odd things, like David Byrne from the Talking Heads, like how could you get to him if Dylan hadn't done what he did? Because you have to be able to show that you can be unique. And a lot of times there's no roadmap. And the problem is people want to say they want something repeatable. They want something that's been done. And the innovators and the creative people were kind of on the bleeding edge, and it hasn't been done. And you do have to have that kind of what people perceive as arrogance. But it's really just the self-confidence to know that you believe in yourself enough to actually put it out there.
Oh,
and that's a hard thing. And in business, I run into people that get meetings and no one speaks up. And I'm in design meetings, and I kind of, as a creative person, I still take my creative art self to my business self.
Sure.
And so when I do design, it's like, I'll speak up. And then people say, well, you're always coming up with stuff. It's like, well, you guys are just sitting there not saying anything. It's like, if you would say something, your ideas would get out, but you don't want to say it. So then you blame me for talking. It's like, well, what, is that my fault? It's not really my fault.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it. You hit on something important. The reason anxiety is so high is that everybody wants a guarantee. Everyone wants to know the result of something before they do it. And that's why anxiety is high, is when we're forced into situations that we don't know, without that confidence, without that self-esteem, then it's just fear. So with the confidence and the self-image and the self-esteem, now it's, you can't stop me. I'm motivated, I'm driven, and I'm determined. But without it, it's fear, it's nervous, it's insecure. That's all it is the unknown. We hate the unknown. Think about the pandemic. Man, I want to know if this immunization works. I want to know what it's going to look like. I want to know when we're going to open the world up again. I want to know. The world was a big fat mess. Yeah, nobody knew how we were going to come out of it. And fear was abundant. And what I saw was, it was either beauty coming out or it was just plain fear coming out, because there wasn't a lot of in between. And you're right. The guarantee is there's no guarantee. And taking that leap of faith is just, for me, there's a chapter in my book called No Regrets, which is a play on the tattoo where it's supposed to say no regrets, and someone misspelled it. Yeah. And so that's a chapter in my book is, I don't want to be at the end of my life saying woulda, shoulda, coulda. I want to go through, think about it, Dylan, think about every single musical artist. They did not come out of the womb as a superstar. It just didn't happen that way. They wrote music. They got told no. They did little bitty, they did backyard parties. They did local, my grandson, he loves screamo music. And here in Austin is the music scene. We're the capital of live music here in Austin. And he went to a concert and he said, yeah, it was in a convenience store, Grandma. And I was like, what? A convenience store? That's so cool. So everyone has to start somewhere, and the Bob Dylans and, the Michael Jacksons and the Pearl Jam, all of those that have succeeded started somewhere. Coca-Cola sold 12 bottles in their first year. WD-40 is called WD-40 because it took 39 tries to get it right. But don't you learn? That's the whole point. I think the perfectionism mentality is, I'm not going to try because I can't handle failing. Well, here's my thought on that. I can't handle succeeding if I can't handle failing. Because how do I know joy if I haven't known sadness? How do I know happiness if I haven't known pain? Like, you've got to have the contrasting things in life, I think, because then when the good things happen, it feels even better. It feels more rewarding, right?
But everything is like, if you think about, every artist I've talked to, there's so many years that they were not, nobody knew who they were. There's so many demos, and typically when I write a song, it's like, tons of different variations of it before I actually present the one that I'm going to present. And it's like people think it's an overnight thing. It's never an overnight thing. It's like the development, like you said, of different variations for multiple products. It's just the way things get built. It's like it's not always the first try that works, but sometimes there are things that happen where, like in music, what we find is like earlier takes are more authentically close to the original artist intent. So there's a process in music where if you go to 100 takes of your song, take 3 and 4 are probably closer to what you really wanted to do, and then you start getting scared of it. By the time you get to take 100, it's no longer recognizable as the original intent. And this is where you have a lot of self-sabotage with artists, is they kind of ruin their work by going into 100 times, and really like the earlier versions are actually good enough.
I
And
love
then
that.
they don't believe it. And I think a lot of people, like I always like to take the parallels. I think people do that in their life with other things.
Yes, we water ourselves down. We water ourselves down. We're this raging fire of passion for something that we love. And what happens? Someone's like, well, I'm not sure I like that. Okay, let me take that out. I love that you just use that, because that's what we do. We dim our light and we water ourselves down because we think others have this opinion and expectation, and we're not staying true to ourselves. I have a fun example. My grandson, he just turned 16 on Sunday, and he plays the drums. And he's been playing for a year, and he is outstanding. We had a instructor giving him lessons, and we quit that because I said, you can do this without an instructor. I guarantee you. I was like, we're a musical family. It's in your blood. You can do this. That boy can play Led Zeppelin now. He can play anything by ear. But I have to laugh because when you say they do it 100 times, he plays in the house. We give him time after dinner he gets to play for about an hour. So I don't go crazy, but he'll play, and then you'll hear him get mad when he messes up. He'll be like, which all musicians, you get frustrated.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of that Sesame Street episode where he's playing the piano. He gets mad and he hits his head on the piano. I don't know if you remember that Sesame Street episode.
Out in the 70s, I saw like all those things.
Yeah. Remember, he's trying to play a song. I think it was Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or something. And then he gets mad and he's like, and he hits his head. So I showed that to my grandson and he started laughing. But here's the thing. When we get back to the watering down and dulling our shine, the problem is, and this is what I learned from writing my books and from really like running my business my way and doing what I want. From day one, I said, next stop, Oprah's couch, because I knew I had the ability to be there to share a message. And my message and my why was more important than anything, the how or the when or the what.
Mm-hmm.
But what I noticed, and this is something that I want to give you listeners, something that's important, if you're doing something you're passionate about and you run into a point where you're just frustrated at it or it's not feeling good, stop doing it and walk away. I never had writer's block, and now I'm 3 books in. I never had writer's block. I wrote my children's book in literally an hour. It's because when I did it, I only did it when I felt really inspired and really good about it. And if I didn't feel like writing or I wasn't in the mood, there's no way I was going to go put that half effort.
Yeah.
Yes. You get that? You get that, don't you?
Forcing it doesn't work. Yeah. Well, a lot of times with artists, what we'll do is you got to have a moment of quiet. And it's kind of referred to in like a lot of classic art, but like a lot of times the idea of the muse, right? The idea of being inspired. Well, you can't have a lot of noise in your head to feel the muse. Yep. And if you're really frenetic and you're kind of burned out or you're getting too much overload, then you're really not going to produce. But if you can get yourself to do however you want to, like meditation or just breathing practices or just calming yourself down, a lot of times it's like I won't have any expectation of what I want to do. I just kind of get into a quiet stage. And then I say, you know what? I'm not going to put any expectations. I'm just going to let it come. And I'll just put my recorders on, go on my piano, and just play, but make sure my recorder's on. Because what I find is if you get into that kind of flow state, if you get into that kind of like if you capture it and you realize like, I don't know if it's going to be good or not, but I'm still going to record it. Because if you're in that flow state, in that present moment, things, if you trust yourself, it comes, because there's all this stuff that's coming from the inside and the outside, the microcosm and the macrocosm, and it all comes through. And artists, whether you're an author or a public speaker, that you can channel. So you could, like, if you read that crowd and you're a public speaker, you could have something set down that you were going to say. But if you get an epiphany, don't throw it away. Don't say, well, I had this plan, so I'm not going to do it. It's like if you let that come, a lot of times that works better than what you were going to do. And it's really knowing how to read those moments and kind of live in the present. And I think that's where animals are living in the present, because they're not thinking about, well, I was in the shelter and I hated it, so now I hate all humans.
Right.
They're like, this human's cool, so this is the present moment, so that's cool. I'm going to live from there.
Yes.
And I think that's what I think the animals do. My cat's like that too, because she got mad because I didn't give her food on time. She thought she was going to die because it was like 15 minutes late. But then after she figured, it's like, I don't even remember I was doing that. Really, she's like, I can't remember I was mad at you. I was happy now.
Right. It's like, do what feels good in the moment. Stop planning, because first of all, it comes out more authentic anyway. When I would do that sort of channeled writing, I remember my husband editing the book, and I was like, did you change any of this? He goes, no, that was all you. And I was like, woo, I was in the flow there. You can tell, because it's better quality when you, like you said, you got to remove the resistance. And, in the health and wellness and the, woke thing that everybody's doing, there is truth to the fact of just clear it out, go for a walk, go have the outlet. Music is an outlet. Art is an outlet. I'm a super creative person, and I like different hobbies. I change hobbies like I change my underwear. I just love to create something because it's such a great way, especially I have attention deficit. So it's a great way for me to like stop thinking about something and force myself to only focus on this one thing. And when I do that, it's so much better. It just turns out beautifully. It's just a much different vibe when, like you said, you just let it flow. And musicians especially, because you'll see the musicians who are just playing and closing their eyes and they're feeling the music. And that's the key, is be in those feelings where if it feels good, do it. Yeah. So if it doesn't feel good, don't do it, right? There's a law of
diminishing returns. Yeah, there's like the diminishing returns. Like if you get in a studio session and you're with the producers and the engineers and they're trying to go for perfection, which I always tell them, perfection is the enemy of creativity, right? Because my point is, if you spend there 8 hours all day trying to do a 3-minute part, going over and over for like 8 hours, which some people will do because they think that's what they have to do. And I'm like, you just wasted my time, because like I'd rather walk away and go in the woods, go for a walk, go on my mountain bike, go for a hike, go in the canoe, and come back and just play it and just capture what it is. And a lot of times the people who obsess and are trying to get that perfect note, it's like, look at the thing about like a guy like Keith Richards. He doesn't phone it in, but he has his own style, and you can't put him on the BPM. You can't put him on the track. It is him. He has his own way of playing his chords, and it's his own timing. And it works. It's why the Stones sound like they do, because you can't really put that into the modern era the way he used to play, like in Exile and stuff like that. It's not as precise as something like Ringo and Lennon and McCartney. They're a lot more precise. That way it's a more ramshackle. But there's something about that that's cool. And I've tried to tell people, like, what's wrong with having a little ramshackle type of thing? And even Neil Young and Crazy Horse are kind of known for that ramshackle kind of style. There's something about that that's very endearing. And you can leave it or not leave it, but there's some artists that don't have to obsess about perfection. They let that piece be like a point in time. And when you can let that go and say, yeah, I could probably play that 10,000 more times, but I'm going to let that piece be what it is.
Yeah, it's non-filtered. Everything in this world today is filtered. And I think that's unadulterated, unfiltered, just talent, just raw. Sometimes just being raw is good. That's why I was very happy about Pamela Anderson going to the New York fashion show with no makeup on, because I'm loving that we're embracing more of, let's just be ourselves, right? Let's be ourselves. Let's
That's
find
radical.
beauty.
It's radical.
Yes. But let's find beauty and acceptance in ourselves. And she told all those young girls, you don't have to go out there and do glam all the time. And she was, of course, in her younger years, it was all about just getting glammed up,
Yeah.
and the looks and the external. And I love, and I'm just going to say this because I'm an over 50 lady here. I'm a nifty 50. We still think we're 25, but our bodies say we're 50. That check light engine is coming on. But it's cool when you get to this point in life. If I had done this, I always say, be the voice my younger self needed. If I had the attitude and the mindset and the understanding now that I have at 20, 25, oh man, I would have been unstoppable. I'm still unstoppable, but I would have been even more unstoppable, because it just, when you lose the care factor, and when I say care factor, I don't care what anyone else thinks of what I'm doing with my journey in my life. I came alone, I leave alone. Now I'm at that point where all that matters is the legacy I leave, how I make people feel, the wisdom I share, and the compassion I have for those around me. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Nothing else matters now.
But I think the empathy is really big, because there's so much bullying, and there's so much like if you get out there on the net, I got, my daughter's like in her mid-20s, and she's like been a real big advocate for like mental health in the arts. And so she's been pushing for safe spaces for people with disabilities to do art. And that's she's an art director, and she's in that kind of space. And she's always been concerned about, like, in social media, a lot of young women are getting these images from social media about what the idealized images from these like influencers. And it causes a lot of harm. It causes a lot of dysfunction, because it's like these are unrealistic things. A lot of them are AI shopped up, they're not real. And the people are getting these this is the prototype of what I should be, and it's like, that's not real. So, but you think it is, and then it's making you feel like inadequate, because you're not matching that what's there. And I'm like, well, that's just something that's getting 1 million views, but that does that mean it's good? Because they got 1 million views, is it good? Cat videos get 1 million views. Is that what you want to? Not that it's bad, but just because it gets 1 million views, does that mean that's what you have to be? That's what I think the problem. You got to realize that, like, the numbers don't matter. It's the authenticity that matters.
You are correct. Yeah. And it's causing a lot of body dysmorphia. And those numbers are also curiosity. There was a young lady on TikTok, and it just broke my heart, and I wanted to just reach out to her, and people were so concerned because she just kept losing weight and losing weight and losing weight, to where she was extremely anorexic and dangerously so. She looked like a walking skeleton, and TikTok finally took her off and said, no, we can't do this anymore, because it was just encouraging her. The more people said, we're concerned about you, the more she wanted to lose weight. And there was such a body dysmorphia that she came off as she loved herself. Yeah. But those numbers are now the measurement of success. And that's unfortunate, because we don't want our young people to think they're only worth the money, the looks, and whatever title or how many views and likes and stuff you get. We really need to campaign. I love what your daughter is doing. I'm so on board with that. Anything in any way that we can influence people and help people with their mental health, of course, I'm all about it. That's what I live for. It's what I do. So what a beautiful thing that she's doing. What a neat niche. That's a great way.
Another example is, like, there are examples of people who didn't have big numbers on social media. But then they got found by people without having big numbers because people thought it was interesting, and then they got deals. Like I was able to get a Grammy award-winning producer to show up my show from a post that only had like 30 views, and then he came on the show, and that's like you couldn't measure that from what these people say. Well, there's no way that could happen unless you have this, and that's not true. And I've had multiple situations where because I put something out, I got a connection, I got to work with somebody, I got to do some project, and it wasn't massive amounts of views, but the right people, was like the law of attraction, saw it. And then I got opportunities because people who were real and wanted to actually have a real conversation. So numbers don't mean that you can't still connect, that you still get work, that you can't still move. And that's like the disconnection in the society, is that everything's being measured on graphs and charts without understanding the human piece of it.
You just said the absolute most important thing that there is. If anyone said what's the most important thing about being in this life and being in this world, is connection. We're not made to be alone. We were not created to be alone. And it is connection. And when you're at that higher place, that law of attraction, that higher place, you attract people that are just like you. So it's like you said, getting into relationships where you're looking for someone to fill you, they have something they need you to fill. And now we're in this imbalance and it's not healthy. And usually narcissists and empaths tend to do that. And if I can read something really quick out of, so my book, My Dog is My Relationship Coach. This is just something, it's called Healthy or Unhealthy, You Decide. Just as we know the love that grows from living with a dog from the time that it is a puppy to its adulthood, to its passing, we also experience joy by having known the dog all through its phases of life. In the right long-term relationship, we can also find the joy of knowing someone and being known by someone throughout the phases of our life. This is one of the things that we seek in our human bond and relationships, the growing, changing, and adapting through acceptance and love for one another over time. That applies to every relationship in your life, right?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times people, like, if you are somebody like that had some kind of like zenith when you were younger, and then people expect you to be in that zone, like you did something really big when you're 17 or 21. And then people expect you to be that and you're 44 or you're 29 or you're 56, and they still want you to do what you did when you were 21. Well, I'm not where I was when I was 21. I'm in a different zone. I'm a different person. And so if I lose people around me that expect me to be that 21-year-old, that's fine, because like I need to be around the people that know who I am now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or accept who I am now. Where instead of trying to force myself back into where I was when I was 22.
No, you're right. You're right. In fact, as we all know, sadly, Matthew Perry just passed, and he talks about, I don't want Friends to be at the top of the list of what I'm known for, because he opened a rehab facility and he reached out to people who were struggling with addiction. And you're absolutely right, because the Matthew Perry that passed the other day is not the Matthew Perry that was acting and was at the top of his game 30 years ago. And you'll see this with a lot of artists, if you start off really, really strong. I mean, Michael Jackson was fighting all the time to stay at that level, and he really couldn't. And he was literally, I believe, because I've seen it enough, he was escaping from that expectation that everyone had of him. And I think it was lonely, and I think it was just a tough place to be. A lot of these artists, like you said, not everybody can be the Rolling Stones and tour for 50, 60 years, but a lot of people hit later on, Helen Mirren, the actress, she didn't start till she was 50, or you've got those child actors that started as children, and then, they got burned out, or, something happened and they didn't shift or pivot to a different thing. So I completely agree with you, where you don't have to stay at the top. It's a road. It's got windy paths. That's how life is. There's forks in the road. There's,
it's like
it's like
a wave. you're at the crest of the wave when you're at the down. It's like every time there's patterns. Like if you when you start writing, and like I've talked to writers like why I like mystery, and then they're known for mystery, but they want to do nonfiction. So sometimes they use a pseudonym so they can slide into that. And there's ways to kind of get where you want. And sometimes you have to you change persona, or you say like no, it doesn't matter if this next project doesn't hit the zenith of the numbers I had before. I'm doing it because I want to do it. There were times where, like when Prince would do jazz, and he knew people wanted to hear Purple Rain, but I actually saw him in Minneapolis, and he was playing a jazz set for 2 hours. It was original jazz, and people were saying they wanted to hear Purple Rain, but eventually they stopped because he was doing something totally different, and he was very much known for like shifting, into something. Like he could have kept on doing Purple Rain, he didn't. He would shift and purposely do something that was not going to make as much money, because that's not where his head was. His head was he wanted to do something different. Bowie used to do that too. Like he was known for like Ziggy Stardust, this character. He could have run that forever. And he's like, no. He went and would change into Aladdin Sane and the Thin White Duke. He changed personas. And some of them would work, and some of them didn't. He didn't care. It's like if that's where my head's at, that's where I'm going.
Yeah. Well, why should we stay status quo? I mean, I just went from nonfiction to a children's book. I don't think you can get any further, apart than that. I mean, my audience is like, 0 to 6 over here and, 18 to 100 over here. I mean, hey, but I feel like we need to do things that challenge us. You should always be doing something that's a little bit scary. That's a little bit, as long as the fear is excitement and not terror, or makes you shut down. But we should always keep trying to do something that challenges us. And I say that to people who say it's too late, Maureen, because I know for a fact it's never too late to start over or to start creating or just take a different path. Just try changing one habit per week and your life will change the trajectory and your mindset will follow. Right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stars. There was a retro soul star named Charles Bradley, and he got really big in his late 50s. His late 50s, 60s, he got super big. He got like, and the people say, well, you can't do that because it's a young person's game in music, but it can happen. It's happened multiple times where people have just kind of found their voice at a time when people would have thought like, well, how do we promote somebody who's 50, 70 years old? Well, if they're a blues guy or a soul guy, it can work, and it did. But it's like the idea is like there's no real age this restriction. There's a lot of age discrimination, but it doesn't mean that you can't still hit it, that you can't still make it. And there are people who feel like, why I missed my prime, I missed my high school years, or I missed my it's not all about that time. There's a lot of power in that time, but it doesn't mean you can't still do something. I mean, I talk to a lot of people. I'm 56. In this kind of, in the 50s, when you're in your 50s, there's a lot of people start reinventing themselves or start rediscovering something that they really wanted to do because they got out there and they graduated college and they got a master's degree, and then they went into something and they find out like, well, it's not making me happy. And then they find another path. And that's who I've been talking to for the last 2 years. People who have found that other path, because it's like it isn't over. They've actually totally redesigned their lives and actually come out a lot happier.
Yeah, and I think it's really effective in this second half. So my journey started at 45, and I started the coaching business around there. And like I told you, when you lose the care factor, when you stop caring about what everybody else thinks, man, you're just completely of clarity on what your path is, and you don't let things stop you as much as you would have in your 20s. And when we talk about ageism, when we talk about discrimination on age, I think it's the same thing from the youth looking at each other and the numbers. And I think ageism, we have to start boosting each other and saying, damn, look at you, you're 56. Damn, you're 53. You look amazing. You're doing great things. We got to boost each other with ageism as much as the younger ones are like, hey, here's 5,000 likes for you. I love that we have a golden bachelor, because for me as a relationship coach, it helps the fact that it's never too late. You don't stop looking for love. You don't stop having passion and sexual needs and the want for companion. So the fact that they did this golden bachelor, I am so excited. And if you look at the women on Golden Bachelor, you will see the level of confidence that these women have compared to watching regular Bachelor. It makes me laugh. It makes me giggle so hard. And they're a good example.
Life experience, man, there's a lot of power in the knowledge. Like I lived in Japan and I've been in the East, and there's this general respect for elders. There's it's just if somebody's older, that's automatic, like they're an elder. You're supposed to be deferential in Japan and Korea and different places I've been. And there's even in the language, there's different terms to that person if they're older. And you have to actually give them, and it's whether or not they deserve it because of things they've done, but it's just because of that age kind of recognition. But and it's interesting because then there's this kind of automatic belief that there's wisdom. And sometimes there's not, but most of the time there probably could be. But it's just you still have to have show me. but the idea that you can respect the fact that you've lived a life and you've had these lessons learned, and if you've actually learned the lesson and applied it and aren't doing the same thing over and over again, you can be a mentor, you can be a coach, you can teach people. It's like what I do as a producer. All the I've been playing since I was 17. You take what you know and you give it to the next generation, or people in my generation. You show what you know. And that's the whole idea of being a teacher or a mentor, is showing people a path, and having a master class to tell somebody, yeah, you can use this little hack. This is a life hack. This is a music hack. This is an art hack. This is an experience hack. It's the things that you can give to people, and it's that oral transfer of knowledge. I think is very important.
Yeah, well, and I definitely know that it's different, and this is really important. Let's talk about communication and how people receive information. You have to listen to how people are receptive to what you're saying. Nobody wants to know it all. Nobody wants advice. I'll tell you what, my kids did not want advice. My daughter is a new mom. She still doesn't want my advice unless it's asked for. So I've learned how not to tell her what to do if it's unsolicited. We're still going to fight over socks on the baby. That's just an old person's thing. I don't care that baby needs socks. But I notice the approach that I have with my 16-year-old grandson, who he lives with us. And then I have a 25-year-old son, and I have a 31-year-old daughter and a 33-year-old daughter. And I notice each one of them receive information differently. So my son, who is is he a Scorpio? I think he's a Scorpio or Libra. He's very black and white. I can't tell him, hey, you should do this. I would just say, what do you think about trying this? Or he'll bring a problem and I'll be like, instead of saying, oh, I told you not to do that, I'll say, well, how did that feel when that didn't work out like that? Or what would be a better way to handle that? So it's how we communicate. We can't tell people what to do, especially as old, wise people that we are. We have to really, to mentor, you have to share information, not shove it down people's throats. And they have to want that information, and they have to be open-minded. So many people are not open-minded to new information because it's opposing their beliefs or their understanding. And that's really being more evolved, when you're open to everything everybody says.
Yeah, if you find out, if you have that teaching technique where you let somebody discover the lesson. So you kind of put them on the road, and they get to make the choices, and they see, if they go this way, then it comes out like that. If they go out like that, it comes out like this. And then they find out for themselves now which one felt better, which actually worked better. And then because they discovered it, then I said, well, like I figured it out. I was like, well, I kind of was leading you that way because I kind of know what's going to happen. But I'm not going to like shove it in your face. It's like you learned it because I was going to show you like the different scenarios, and you can go to crossroads. You go this way, you go that way. You're like, what happens? You know, you beat the devil, or you don't.
But you and I are both, you and I are Gen Xers, and it wasn't like that when we were growing up. Like we were the shut up and put up generation. Like it was just do what I say and that's it. And so our parents were of the boomer generation. And my father would get so frustrated with me when he'd say, well, I'm telling you what you need to do, or I told you what you should do. And I would say to him, Dad, let me figure it out for myself. I don't learn as effectively if it's not my own experience. I can't learn just because you said it. And that is a big, big thing that I've learned with age. That wisdom is you can't give someone your experience. It's impossible. They have to feel it, because think of all the most impactful things in your life that have stuck with you. Your emotions were involved. You had fear, pain, sadness, joy, happy, ecstatic, passion. Someone saying a word to you on a podcast or a speech, or your parents or grandparents or whatever, telling you this is how it is, isn't going to have the same impact as when you live it. You go through it, you feel it, right? That's how I.
Yeah, like they learn by doing. Like once you show somebody like different techniques and different like ways of solving problems. You know, like in our software design, we have all these things that are like algebra problems. And you know, in math, there's different ways to tackle it. You can tackle it in visual ways to kind of break things down so it makes it easier. And then there's all these different kind of hacks. But it really depends on how that person's brain is working, if they're left or right. And even though you think that your hack is the thing that's going to do it, if that person doesn't have that natural inclination to learn that way, then that hack's not going to help them, because they actually do it this other way. And it may be more complex, but that's the way their brain works.
Yes.
And I started to realize when I was working with different developers, they had there's different ways to write things. You can get to the same result. And it's like, and so it's like, do I trash this guy because he doesn't write it the way I would write it, but he got to the same answer? So like, do you have to like, and if it's just as efficient, or maybe it's even more efficient, I shouldn't try to control how he comes up with that. I just kind of give him the framework and say, like, yeah, show me that as long as you hit the target, that's cool.
I love that, because I remember seeing a video, I think it was on YouTube, where they interviewed 100-year-olds. I think there were 25 of them. And guess what? We all arrived at the same equation, because every 100-year-old ended up saying what mattered, what kept me living this long was love, my family, good living, just being happy, not worrying. So the equation at the end of our lives, like you said, we get there a different way, but at the end, we're all looking for that 100-year key to happiness. And it really is the foundation, excuse me, of everything we do. It's connection. It's simple. It's simplistic. You're not going to remember all the cars, all the houses, all the money, all the people that did you wrong at the very end. When God bless you if you live to be 100 or more, you're going to remember the love, and you're going to remember the things that really mattered. And how you get to that equation is up to you.
Yeah, it's how you impact, the world, and the empathy you have. If people remember that you are very empathetic and understanding, and you help people rather than judging people. Yeah. When you reached out, you didn't reach out to like, oh, you're doing it wrong. Is that you reach out with your hand to like lift to the next thing. That if you go in that perspective, like if you can be somebody that can help lift, not to try to be somebody that's like, they need me.
Right.
You don't want to make yourself, but you do it because you don't have an expectation of anything in return. You're doing it because you believe that's good for humanity. It's good for the world to be on a positive plane, a law of attraction, and less negativity. That's the point. Not that
Absolutely.
something.
My favorite saying that I have is, there is no competition, only collaboration in this life. And we are not stepping stones for each other. We are rungs on a ladder. And that's what we're here to do. Is I look at you and you've got over 1,000 episodes. I celebrate you. I'm not like, oh man, I'm almost at 200. I celebrate you because now I'm with you and I want to see what you do and I can get ideas. If we always look at the people around us as collaborators and not competition, you're going to get so much further, so much faster in life.
I think that's probably where we're in tonight, because I think it's the wisdom we have is from the voices that we can hear on that we allow to present into the world, and that's what I try to do with the podcast. I really appreciate your point of view. I want everybody to go check out www.lifecoachmaureen.com. As we indicated, that's fully clickable, and you'll be able to connect with Maureen there. And if you like what we were talking about today, please check on that link and you'll get a lot further, more detail about what her approach to life coaching. And we do appreciate you being on the show today.
Thank you. I had so much fun with you. Such a wonderful talk and collaboration. I loved the back and forth and the sharing. It was amazing. I really connected with what you were saying, and I love it. I love doing this. This is my get to. And thank you all for listening. I appreciate you. Head on over to Life Coach Maureen. And can I talk about my podcast, or can I post or just say what my podcast is as well?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Because I'll have you on too. So my podcast is I Never Knew, But My Dog Did. So that's the title of mine. Go listen to it. We talk about these same things that we're talking about today, and it is about people who've been through heartbreak, triumph, trauma, really devastating things, and they came out on the other side better because they did change that mindset and perspective. So you'll love the stories, and we'd appreciate you guys coming over and subscribing, and let us be as good as this one. Let us build to that. We have all 5 stars on Apple, so I'm really, really thrilled. So come on over and join our podcast as well.
Yeah, they can get to that from your main link, right?
Yeah.
If they go to your URL, they can get to your podcast.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you again for being on the show. It's like, yeah, we do encourage everybody to check that out. And podcasters, we like to guest on other podcasts, so we like to cross over. So that's a good technique that a lot of us have been doing lately, is they showing up on each other's shows. So yeah, I'll probably take you up on that later.
Awesome. Perfect.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.